Hey guys, what's going on everybody? And today, first of all, a few things. Number one, first thing I want to say is thank you guys so much for 100 subs on my gaming channel. And you can check out my gaming channel in the description. It's youtube.com/sprintkeys. But guys, thank you all so much for that. I never thought I'd get there, let alone go from 19 to 100 in 2 or 3 weeks. That's crazy. But yeah, I just want to thank you all for that. So I said, hey, I'm going to upload on both of my channels and start daily uploads. Try to start daily uploads on my tech channel and try to start daily uploads on my gaming channel. So it's going to be epic. And I have actual good video ideas now for my tech channel. And you might be wondering, well, what do you mean good video ideas? Well, you see, what I'm going to be doing is finding PCs on eBay, making them better, seeing how much they really cost, and also finding another pre-built that would be better. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. And just as a little disclaimer, I did get this idea from Dawood Does Tech Stuff. Dawood, I don't know if I'm saying that right, sorry. But his channel link will also be in the description. I just thought I'd upload this as well as another upload as kind of like a 100 sub special, but for both channels. So yeah, it's going to be really cool, guys. But other than that, I hope you enjoy this video. And guys, let's jump into it. Alright guys, so here we have, what is this? This, my friends, is the AMD Custom Ryzen 5 quad-core gaming PC. It looks like it's at 4.2 gigahertz, 8 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte hard drive, I'm guessing, at $600, AM4, DDR4 you'd hope. I'm glad it's DDR4, because if it was DDR3, there would be a problem. And Vega 11, so it does look like it has integrated graphics. And 41 of these are viewed per hour. Jeez, that's I guess if it's a decent PC, then 41 could be viewed per hour. But first off, let's take a look at this case. So this system is $600. You'd expect it to perform pretty decently if it's $600. It should perform decently, right? So let's take a look at this case. Let's see. And right away what I'm noticing is it does have 4 fans. However, it basically just has one because, well, it has a back rear exhaust fan, I'm guessing. It's like there's 3 LEDs up front. I'm not going to call them fans because the glass of the case wraps around them. How do they get any air in? How? That's not how it's supposed to work at all. How does air flow through them? What? It's the glass wraps around. So it's 3 LEDs with an old Thermaltake logo. That case doesn't look great. It at least has a tempered glass side panel, but I would go with a different case if you want better performance out of your system. But moving on, let's check out these specs. For the case, it is a Thermaltake V200 tempered glass RGB edition. Okay. Yeah, that case doesn't seem great. Processor AMD Ryzen 5 3400G, quad-core CPU, 11-core GPU. Alright, that's actually correct. I'm glad they didn't put 15 cores in the title because some people do that just because they do 4 plus 11. And then they're like, oh, it's 15 cores. No, that's not at all what it is. AMD Ryzen 5 3400G, operating 3.7 GHz, turbo 4.2. That's all correct. Integrated AMD Radeon Vega 11 for $600. You could do better. I feel like that's something you'd more see on a $400 system. For storage space, this is where it kind of starts to get sketchy. So we either have 1 terabyte of some generic Toshiba HDD or 240 gigabyte SSD. So you either get more storage or fast storage. And most of the time I'd go with the SSD, but that depends on whether or not it has a DRAM cache, which I'm guessing it's some Intel SSD or something. I don't know for sure, but it's probably not a great SSD and it's probably not a great HDD either. Most of the time, I'd go with the SSD, unless you're doing content creation and you just need lots of storage, then I'd go with the HDD. Although at that price point, if these are the specs that you're going with, you could honestly get both of them. But you can spend $55 to get both. Although, no, that's like a scam. It's probably you get the SSD and then they're adding on 55 for the HDD. You get 2 terabytes of like 7200 RPM storage, because I'm guessing that's like 5400 RPM. But anyways, moving on to the RAM, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. As long as it's in dual channel mode. If it's in single channel mode, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. No, it could be 2666 megahertz. Because this is 8 gigabytes of DDR4, and if you're using integrated graphics, I think it does actually use up some of the system memory. So that leaves 6 gigs of RAM left over. That's not great. I wouldn't recommend that. And it's only 3000 megahertz. At least it's not 2666. But you could get 3200 or not necessarily 3600 at this price if you're doing these specs, but 3200 is perfectly fine, and even 3600 too would be very ideal. But 3200 megahertz is pretty good speeds. I would want 3200 megahertz in the system and more than 8 gigs of RAM. For a power supply, oh my, what is that thing? Big red flag. Now, it is made by EVGA, which is a reputable power supply manufacturer. However, it's 400 watts. EVGA doesn't make good 400 watt power supplies. No companies really do. You don't want a 400 watt PSU. You want like 500 to 700. 500 would be ideal for this system, probably, for cost. It's not even 80 plus rated, it doesn't look like. It's 400 watt EVGA power supply that probably has like the worst looking cables you could possibly get on a system, and it's probably gonna completely fry your system in 1 to 2 days. What? No, don't get that. And an A320M at that price point. Again, that's something you'd see in more of a $400 system. You could get this thing, I'm sure, for $400. For $200 more, you'd hope that there's like a B450 in there. For software, Windows 10 Pro, at least it's Windows 10. And let's check out these common upgrades. Are there rare upgrades too? Uncommon upgrades? Anyways, you could either get a B450 micro ATX or a full ATX motherboard for $25 or $50. You have to pay $100 extra for a B550 ATX motherboard? That's ridiculous. 100 extra on top of like those 70 they're charging. It's not worth $170. No, as far as I'm concerned, you're not going to be paying that much for a B550 anyways. That's a complete ripoff. I would personally go with a B450 MATX because you're not going to need anything really in terms of PCIe slots. So MATX would do the job just fine. If you really needed full ATX, then it's kind of a ripoff for like $120, but I guess. But still, it's not great. And it's not 80 plus certified. This is the upgrade I recommend. I'm sure it's like an EVGA 500 BR. But that thing's not worth like it's already probably priced. They're probably making you pay like $50 for the PSU already. It's not worth $70 for a 500 watt 80 plus white PSU. I'd want at least bronze personally, but I'd settle for white if it's an upgrade from nothing. And why would you want higher wattage with that system? That thing could run easily on like 350 watts. That's not the right choices for a $600 system. Don't buy this thing. Please just don't buy this thing for your own sake. It's going to perform terribly most of the time. You could do worse, but you could certainly do a lot better. And speaking of doing a lot better, I'm going to show you guys a build that you could do a lot better with. Alright guys, now before I show you the better build, I wanted to show you how much these parts actually cost. So I was right, this thing could easily run on 300, 400 watts, but you don't want that. You want to, there's like no 400 watt power supplies that are 80 plus rated. You really don't buy power supplies that aren't 80 plus rated. Just don't. Do not. It is the worst mistake. one of the worst mistakes you could possibly make when building a system, because sure, everything could be fine, but it could also go completely wrong, and then you've wasted a ton of money on a useless system that you won't even be able to sell if the PSU fries everything. So yeah, that's not great. But here are the specs fully imported. We have a Ryzen 5 3400G, 8GB GA A320M S2H micro ATX AM4 motherboard. I couldn't find the exact brand of RAM because it doesn't list it, but I'm going to assume it's something like a Patriot Viper Steel 8GB kit, DDR4 3000 MHz CL16 memory. It doesn't say whether or not it's dual channel. I hope it's dual channel. I just assumed it's dual channel, but then I realized, what if it's not? And now that I'm looking at the rest of that system, it is likely not dual channel. So I put in the pieces of RAM that cost in the end like $35. It's so cheap. An Intel 730 series 240GB 2.5-inch SSD. And the Thermaltake V200, as well as the sketchiest looking power supply ever. EVGA 400 watt ATX power supply. That was like the only one that was listed. Oh, who's selling this? Who on earth is selling this? Stables, get this off your store shelves immediately. You're gonna get like, you're gonna get so many returns on that thing because it's dead. I mean, at least buy it off there instead of eBay from some sketchy seller so that you can easily return it. But geez, don't buy it in general. No, that's awful. It's not even 80 plus rated. It has like the worst looking cables I've ever seen probably on a PSU. Now a lot of PSUs are like that, but it's not even like, the cables don't even match to the PSU. They're like these weird off colors with like a black modernish PSU. Just don't buy it. I don't care that it's from EVGA. Don't buy any PSU that's not 80 plus rated. Just don't. And the grand total is, drum roll please, $382.57. That's including shipping. That's kind of sad considering you're paying $600 for that. You're saving $200 on the system. 200. That's $200 that you could easily be spending way better. So don't buy that system. And if you want to buy a PC for that price, you're going to want to build it in general first of all, because the price, you're not going to be able to buy an even decent pre-built at that price. If you're doing that, you kind of want the best performance you can get, like the best bang for your buck system that you can get. So just don't really buy a pre-built at that price. I will be showing you guys a pre-built option at the end of the video. But here we have the final total. And then let's check out an actual semi-decent parts list. It's actually decent. So, guys, let's check it out. Alright, guys, so now here is the new parts list. And before I show you guys this thing, I just want to say, you guys might recognize this parts list from a Linus Tech Tips video. Guys, I promise you I didn't take this parts list from a guide off the internet or Linus Tech Tips. I did pick these parts on my own. I swear, guys, you'll just have to trust me. I promise you guys. Like, I promise I did actually pick these all myself. I didn't look at Linus's video and copy the parts. I actually did pick this 100% myself. You guys will just have to trust me on that one, but I promise you guys, I picked this myself, okay? But anyways, starting with the CPU, we are going from a Ryzen 5 3400G, which is 4 cores at 3.7 GHz, to a Ryzen 5 2600, 6 cores at 3.4 GHz. So it is a nice mid-range CPU. It is 6 cores, so that's going to be great for any kind of workloads at all. And I believe it does have hyper-threading as well, so that's going to be amazing. But yeah, it is a really nice CPU. I can't stress that enough. I would 100% recommend it for this build. You can't do a Ryzen 5 3600 for this build because it's too expensive. But honestly, a 2600 is still a good CPU, especially because it will perform better than a Ryzen 5 3400G for actually a little bit less money. So I would recommend it. It's just going to be a better CPU overall, especially because that means we went with an actual GPU, which I'll get to later. Alright guys, now for the motherboard, we went from a sketchy model number Gigabyte G8 A320M board, it's like the lowest end motherboard I'm sure you can get, to a Gigabyte B450M DS3H Micro ATX AM4 motherboard. I did have another one selected, but it went up in price like crazy, like $112. That's not an ideal price for... No, it wasn't even $112. It was like $120 for a B450M. It's not even a B550. Yeah, I wouldn't be buying that. So I went to a Gigabyte B450M DS3H. It is still a B450 motherboard, except now it's cheaper, and it should still be a good motherboard. So yeah, guys, that is the motherboard that I have chosen for this build. It's going to be an upgrade from an A320M. Just trust me. It's going to be a big upgrade, or at least an upgrade. And then for memory, this is where it starts to get like bigger upgrades. Because from 8 gigabytes of probably single channel 3000 megahertz DDR4, which already with an iGPU is bad, I went, even without an iGPU, to 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 megahertz RAM. It's supposed to be really good RAM. I would recommend it. And yeah, if you guys don't absolutely need RGB, which in this type of budget I wouldn't recommend, then yeah, go for this because it's going to give you way better performance. So 100%, this is the RAM of choice here. And then guys, for the storage of the system, the old choices were either 1 terabyte of storage or 240 gigabytes. That's like kind of sketchy, right? I chose on this system a Samsung 860 EVO 250 gigabyte SSD. Now, since this system is built to perform better for the price, I couldn't get a ton of storage in here, but it's still 10 more gigabytes, and this one does, at least I believe, have a DRAM cache in it, so it should be fast. The other one might have too, but I don't know for sure. This SSD is likely going to be a lot better, and it's got 10 more gigabytes of storage, which doesn't seem like a lot. But the fact that Windows takes up like 16, that means you'll have like 10 extra gigabytes to install a few games and game updates and stuff. So that's going to make a difference in load times and everything. I would highly recommend that SSD. Then, what you guys were all waiting to hear, a GPU. We went from the integrated graphics on the system to a GTX 1650 Super. It is only a 4 gigabyte model, but it is a WindForce OC model, so it is factory overclocked, and is made by Gigabyte. So, yeah, guys, this is a pretty decent GPU for the budget. Now, is it going to max out every AAA game out there? No. And I thought of putting a 4 gigabyte or even 8 gigabyte RX 580 in it because it would have performed a little bit better. But that's too expensive. So a GTX 1650 Super should perform pretty well for the price. And so it's only $170. I went with it. It should be a pretty good GPU. And finally, for a case. Now, this case isn't like super fancy RGB or anything, but it does have 2 fans in it, which is nice. It might actually have more than that. But I went with a Cougar MX330G ATX mid-tower case because it looks like, from what I can tell, it has decent airflow and stuff in it. And it should be a pretty decent case, and it should improve performance from that old thing. Lastly, for a power supply, I went from the most sketchy 400 watt EVGA power supply. I mean, you could do worse. You could find a 200 watt, really sketchy, old power supply that, like, sparks every 15 minutes that could cause a house fire. But it's not a good PSU at all. I went to an EVGA 500 watt 80 plus bronze certified ATX power supply. It is an EVGA 500 BR, so bronze rated and 500 watts. That's great for this system. It's going to hopefully not die in a few days because that's actually what I use in my main rig, and it is a really nice power supply. It hasn't failed me yet, and I don't think it ever will. It's shown no issues whatsoever, so yeah, it's a nice power supply overall. And guys, now the grand total of this system is, drumroll please, only $594. And this one's $580. So in the end, the base total is only $587, but including shipping for $7 is $594. For like 3 times the performance, you're paying like $10 for 10 times the performance. Like, well, not 10 times, but it's going to be like a huge step up in performance. So 100% would recommend my build over that one. It's just going to make a huge difference. So to anyone that's looking at this PC, you should be building your own at this price point. And yeah, it's just going to be a much, much, much better PC. However, if building a PC is just too intimidating for you, you just don't want to build a PC, then I have a system here. I did some research, and it looks like this system is going to be one of the best systems that you can really get for the price, at least for a pre-built, because most pre-built are going to be much worse than this. You could maybe do slightly better, but you could also do a lot worse. So it's just going to be, it's going to be a better system overall, especially at this price point. If you're picking a pre-built, it's not going to be that powerful, especially compared to the system that I picked out. But this thing isn't an awful system. So looking at the specs of it, the bad parts of it, which I'll go over first, are it does have, I don't know if it's 80 plus bronze rated. I believe the power supply is an 80 plus certified PSU at least. But it only has a Ryzen 3 1200 in it. I believe that's Ryzen 3 anyways. And it only has a single channel stick, what it looks like to be a single channel stick, of 8 gigabytes of RAM. So for a pre-built, that's not great. But it only gets better from there because at least it does have an RX 584 gigabytes, which is technically a VR ready card, although I would go with the 8 gigabyte version. If you want VR in a system at this price point, you'd want to go with an 8 gigabyte version of that and just upgrade it down the line. But this system will be upgradable a little bit at least. I mean, you want to upgrade that CPU sometime soon. But still not awful. And so we have the Ryzen 3 1200. It is only a quad-core CPU. But it's okay, I guess. It's going to be, the Ryzen 5 in the old system is going to be better, but the RX 584 gigabyte is going to completely blow away the integrated graphics. And since the integrated graphics eats into the system's RAM, the old system had like 6 gigabytes of RAM basically, and then you'd also have to run like a few other things maybe in the background. So I wouldn't personally go with the other setup. If you want gaming performance, I would want a dedicated GPU. And again, guys, this isn't the best that you could do, but it's good enough for a pre-built. It's probably the best pre-built that you could get, or at least one of them. It does have Wi-Fi on it, so that's nice, because if you don't have Ethernet, then that could be a problem. You don't want to spend even more money, because this thing is a little bit over the $600 price point, but honestly, you're going to want to spend a little bit over that if you're getting a pre-built that even performs close to it. And yeah, it's decent at least, and it does include a free gaming keyboard and mouse, so hey, it's at least going to be decent, and it looks like it has actual front airflow on the 3 fans it includes, so that's nice. Plus it has a rear fan too, so that's great. Front I/O doesn't look awful. I mean, it looks like a little bit of an outdated design, but it does look like it has a USB 3 port. So overall, this isn't a bad thing, and I've found Skytech systems too. Well, they usually have like single channel RAM and stuff. Be one of the best pre-builts that you can get for the price, because you'll always have to sacrifice 1 or 2 things. And I would sacrifice probably getting single channel RAM to get an actual dedicated GPU and more RAM, because even though they both have 8 gigabytes, again, it's integrated graphics. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. The parts list, this system, the old system, everything will be in the description, as well as the channel links like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. I know I enjoyed making it. But other than that, guys, yeah, I do really, again, hope you enjoy this. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss the rest of the series, because this is actually going to be made into a series. This isn't going to be the first PC that I do with this. But yeah, guys, other than that, have a great rest of your day or night, depending on when you're viewing this video. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of the series, or if you want to check out my gaming channel, go check that out. But guys, again, as always, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video of the series.